A lot of new pieces here in the management as well as the players to get excited about. But if they're going to win, they're going to need some of those other pieces to step up, the ones that Trent picked. We'll talk about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Man, I've covered this team professionally since the turn of the century, around that time, but I've been on radio and all of that stuff too here and with Locked On for the last 6 years. So now that you know who I am, I'm going to tell you what it's all about. We're going to tell you about the biggest stories that could impact this team each and every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We got 3 segments. I'm going to tell you what all 3 of them are. What turnover said to us. Did turnover talk? Who is turnover? Turnover means how they flipped this roster and got probably 40 some odd new people in here. It told us what the new staff believed, what was wrong with the team when they took over. It's not what was wrong with the old staff, but they assessed the team. They know where they want to go. And they said, okay, right now, this is where we need. We'll talk about it. Prove it or lose it. A lot of people have name recognition with the fans, but it's name recognition that is synonymous with the team losing. So either that recognition is going to go to someone who can help this team win. If it is those same players, good. But you got to show it now. You got to prove it. You're going to have an opportunity here, even though this regime isn't the one that got you. It's all right. We'll still see it. Now, finally, we'll start at the top, talking about impact players drafted before 2025. There's been a lot of them. And what moved me to do this show is that we're going to be honest about what we're doing here. And one of the things in the past I've always said was everybody always blames everything on everybody that left, right? And trust me, there's enough blame to go around. There was enough losing and enough dysfunction over the course of the last, 15 years, right? Where if you really want to blame somebody for something, there's something to blame somebody for. And many of the people that left, well, they left because they were part of the problem, right? But they didn't do everything poorly. See, I was about to say they didn't do everything wrong, but in this, there's no right or wrong. It's just like, how well can you do your job? Obviously, for you to get to the point where you're a GM in the National Football League, you have done something right. And I know people will stand up and start yelling about plagiarisms and all of that stuff. Yeah, okay, I got you. But here's the thing, and I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but to even be in that situation, you had to do something right. And I know somebody's going to sit there and say it again. Yeah, just have your name be such and such. No, that'll help you get so far. To be a GM in this league, you have to do something right. So both Dave Caldwell and Trent Baalke obviously paid their dues the old school way. They did it the old school way. They were scouts. They were people from the very bottom. But it doesn't always mean that that's going to work out. So to depersonalize this from the Jacksonville Jaguars, GMs get fired and hired a whole lot in the National Football League. Coaches get hired and fired a whole lot in the National Football League. Look no further than Vic Fangio, the hero from the Super Bowl for the Eagles. Yeah, they couldn't wait for him to get out of Miami and Denver in his 2 previous stops. See how that works? Because everyone wants to think that just because things didn't work, it was the issue or the problem of the people that left. I'm going to show you today how Trent didn't do everything wrong. I kind of been telling y'all that the whole time. And this wasn't like he has no clue of what he's doing when I kept being critical of him. No, I'm telling you, it's hard. I just felt like with him, his time doing this here was done. And the reason why is because I was willing to give him a second chance. However, and his first chance was in San Francisco. However, he started doing, and this team started acting, and the rumblings and all of the words started mimicking the same exact situation that he left when he was in San Francisco, and I just didn't want any part of it. Him and Doug Peterson looked just like him and Jim Harbaugh to a certain extent. And I was just thinking like, okay, we'll never win. But he drafted some pretty good players. We sat down with the coaches the other day, and I'll get with one group just right now. So I'm going to look at the most recent ones, right? The most recent draft picks. In segment 2, I'll go back to 23 and 22, and then even take a look at years prior to that and show you and draw a parallel between what we hope is a magical season this year in 2017 when they actually went on a run that was magical. Let's talk about last year's picks that were not first-round draft choices. Those are easy scouting. And I'm going to show you something from the Caldwell era that will make you go, man, if he just did that better, they probably would have won because he got enough picks. He got enough good players late in the draft, with the exception of a couple of years. Here's the thing. They are really, really depending on Mason Smith. They like where he's at. The starter is Arik Armstead. Make no bones about it. I get that feeling just from the conversations that I've had and the questions that I've asked, and then the things that I've heard more than anything else. I believe Mason Smith is going to be the heir apparent to Arik Armstead. He's going to play a lot. I think it helps Arik Armstead extend his career a little bit longer, but he's an extremely important individual, and he was chosen in the 2024 draft. This is why I told folks, don't just assume that they're taking Mason Graham, because how many 3 techniques you gonna get? Me and somebody who played for a long time in the NFL that's in that building in another capacity said, how many 3 techniques they wanted? What do they think? I even asked Matt Edwards the other day about his philosophy. He says, well, it always depends on what you need, what you have. But I think most defensive line coaches really understand how important it is to have that nose guard and to play him. So you're not going to draft Mason Graham when you have Mason Smith and then you have Arik Armstead, and you're not going to play him at nose guard. They like Devon Hamilton. Talk about him later. But Devon Hamilton's backup is also a guy, George Jefferson from LSU, who was taken in that same draft. So I'm going to name 4 players. There's 2 of them right there from 2024 that are super, super important, but in backup roles. 2nd, 4th round pick. Developmental backup roles can't have too many defensive linemen. I think so much talk was about why Mason Smith was inactive so much a year ago. When you start hearing stuff like that, like why isn't this guy playing? Why isn't that guy playing? Why isn't that guy playing? That's when you have people upset because guys that they picked weren't playing enough. The last 2 players I'll mention that are very, very important are Cam Little. Thank God the Jaguars finally got a kicker, got a young kicker. Now it looks like as long as nothing goes crazy, he'll be here for as long as, the longest kickers usually last 6, 7, 8, 9 years. This is a chance for us to Josh Scobie and Mike Hollis thing all over again. So I really like that pick. And then Jarian Jones. It looks like he keeps getting replaced, but it's not necessarily getting replaced. They went out in free agency and got some stuff. Jair Alexander became available today, and all of a sudden Jaguar fans want him too. But they got a couple of DBs in free agency and a couple in the draft. Only 1 corner. Well, Travis is a corner too. There's 2 of them. But still, can't have enough. They got a plan for him. They love his work. They love how he moves around. They love everything about him. So we'll just have to see how that works out. But I will tell you this, Monteric Brown has had a really, really good camp also. Let's discuss this more. We're going to give you 4 players from 2 more drafts that happened under Trent Baalke that we expect to give the Jaguars some critical minutes and snaps this year. We'll talk about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored to you by and brought to you by Monarch Money. Man, I'm telling you right now, Monarch Money is the real deal when it comes to managing your finances. Man, Monarch Money, it's not just, for you to make sure that all of your accounts are accounted for. It's not for you to make sure, not just for you to budget. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, make sure you knock off all of those subscriptions that's there, all of that stuff. You get really good, surprising insights, all in one convenience and easy collaboration when you deal with Monarch Money. You can track all your investment spending all in one place, and you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. And that's what we all should be doing. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. We are rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Another week. It's the second week in June here. And mini camp's coming up this week, so we're going to spend a little bit of time on the ground, boots on the ground. That song is going crazy right now. But, yeah, we're going to be down there 10 toes down and seeing what we can pull and juxtapose to bring back to you, the fans, with Locked On Jaguars and Jaguar fans, period. But we were just talking about the 2024 draft. Players who were not chosen in the first round that can help this football team. And that means that we are going to give credit to Trent Baalke and his entire staff, by the way, for these players. And, before you go too far with it, you might think, okay, Wig, what are you saying? Well, what I'm saying is just because I wanted somebody gone or did not think they were good enough to do the job, and it's obvious that they weren't, does not mean that they didn't do some things good. And the Jaguars, though they've come in here and flip-flop this roster upside down and added so many new players, I still believe that there's a lot of use and a lot of good left in a bunch of the guys that's on the roster. One guy I can tell you right now that they are absolutely, I think, to say it this way would mean that, well, I'll just say it. I think they love Walker Little. I think they absolutely love Walker Little. And somebody may have been on to something. And what they may have been on to, I'm sorry for wiping, I'm sweating here if you're watching, but somebody may be on to something. And that somebody might be whoever that was, whether it was Trent, Tony, whoever that was that said, we need to keep Walker Little under contract. Because if the new coach, Sean Starrett, when we was asked, I think Mia O'Brien, it was me and Mia, we were sitting there, and he asked, you saw a little smile come on his face, man. That's a big 6'7", 320-pound man. And not only did you see a smile come on his face, you got to understand the EVP, Tony Baselli, is also someone that played that position, that understands development and the time it takes. And he saw that thing up close. You don't allow guys like that to hit the market in free agency and hope for the best. So they did a really, really good job with that. They did. It was the stuff before that made me feel funny about Walker. It's like, okay, it's almost like they did the same thing with him that Minnesota did with Ezra Cleveland, but then when Minnesota made the decision on Ezra Cleveland, they made the decision to go ahead and move beyond him instead of paying him. It has nothing to do with him. And I think we need to look back at that too and say that's another good move by Trent Baalke, because he found a guy that was expendable because Minnesota just couldn't pay everybody. They got a real good offensive line up there. They just couldn't pay everybody, man. They just went out and paid a guard this year on the other side, but it's still a year and a half removed from when they had to pay Ezra, right? And it bought them enough time for them to go out and do what they think is buy something that's probably better and more sure than Ezra Cleveland, as opposed to spending a little bit of money on Ezra Cleveland. They spent a lot of money on Will Fries, right? So what does it mean for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Well, it means that this is not a total rebuild. It means that they're not starting completely over. It means that they come in here and then they use the tape that they see, and then they use the evaluation that they had on all of these players when they were at their old stops. They just don't find out. It's not like a high school coach, like you move from New Jersey and come to Florida, and you don't know any of your guys when you come out. You just look around and go, okay, let's see what we got. That's not the way this is. There's a team out there that you're going to take over that has a whole bunch of players. Do you remember them all? You damn right I remember them. Half of them, the reason why I'm taking it. And you come in and think, okay, I'm going to be able to do something that the last GM didn't do communication-wise, and then I'm going to add my little bit of stuff to what they did, or I'm going to do my thing, and then I'm not throwing out everything, right? We're going to keep that. It's like if you're taking over a house and you breaking it down to the studs, but you're looking around, grabbing on poles and looking at concrete and steel saying, no, we can keep that. We can keep that. That's what it is. That's what this is. So I'm going to skip the middle one. I'm going to go back to the Devon Lloyd draft. That's the draft where Trayvon Walker was taken first overall. There are players in these last 3 drafts that are going to help this team. I've already done the one from 2024. I'm going to skip and go backwards and do the one from 2021. Yeah, 24, 23. Oh, no, maybe I should do 2022. Which one of these am I going to do? Am I going to do 2021 or 2022? Let's do 2022. That's the Trayvon Walker draft, because the 2021 draft, that was the Trevor draft with Walker Little. Cisco's gone. Tyson Campbell is still here. ETN is still here. So yeah, they're still getting some play out of that one too. But here in 2022, and remember, this is all about guys not chosen in the first round, because those guys would still be here under their 5th-year option, have a chance to put them under a 5th-year option. I'm talking about the others here, right? If you get down to 2022, Devon Lloyd, Luke Fortner, Chad Muma, and Monteric Brown, to me, are the main 4. In fact, they're the only 4 that are still really well. Is Greg Jr.? I don't think Greg Jr. is around no, that's Chris Braswell. So Greg Jr. is gone. So Snoop Connor's gone. So if all of those guys, everybody's left are people that I believe have a chance to make a contribution. Those linebackers, I'm gonna put them together. Somebody got to figure it out, right? You either gonna finally get people or somebody that can use your skill set correctly, or you're gonna just lose this spot that people have for you as far as fans is concerned. Everybody goes, oh, we got Mobile, we got Devon Lloyd. Okay. PFF says Devon Lloyd was a top 10 linebacker. It just doesn't feel like that. And then they didn't exercise his 5th-year option. So maybe some of that stuff that folks pay attention to, or have you try to pay attention to, doesn't really tell the whole story. This is why I say numbers lie, but they don't tell the whole truth. Well, numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole truth. Because if you find any advanced statistics or analytics that has him as a top 7 to 10 linebacker, I'm going to tell you, man, we just don't see that. We don't see that the same way we don't see Trevor Lawrence the way a whole bunch of y'all see it, because you weren't watching every snap. You weren't watching everything that went on. But those guys, those 4 guys have an opportunity. And that's why I put them right here in the middle, because Devon Lloyd, Chad Muma, and Luke Fortner. Luke Fortner better hold off Monheim, the 7th round pick from USC. He has to. He's familiar with Liam Cohen. They were together in college at Kentucky. His performance is why, under Cohen, is probably why he got drafted so highly. Either that or the Jaguars just made a mistake and drafted a dude that's not very strong. But in any event, there's an opportunity there. I would say the one, believe it or not, that I believe of all of those guys that has the chance to make the biggest impact is Monteric Brown. And that's because of what I've seen in training camp. And he has a shot to do that, because even though they picked Travis Hunter up top, and I ain't saying he's going to push Travis Hunter aside, I'm saying the fact is if Travis Hunter's your best corner, and he probably should be considered your best corner. I mean, the dude should have won the Biletnikoff Award, right? And there are people that think as a corner alone, he would have been a top 5 pick. That means he's your best corner. But he's going to play offense some. That provides opportunity. And when opportunity and luck match up, then there you go. There's your chance right there. Opportunity is luck and preparation. So he has been prepared. Now, luck of the draw, he might just score an 80-yard touchdown. And Monteric, you get a chance to go in and play. This is where I think Monteric Brown makes the bigger difference. We're going to look at the one in the middle. The one in the middle is really, really intriguing to me. That's why I did it this way. We'll do it in segment 3. And I'm going to tell you what the turnover this team said to us. We'll talk about that and more in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man, we rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, talking about these others, man, the impact players drafted before 25 that are not first-round picks like Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, of course, Trevor Lawrence, ETN, Anton Harrison. You know, we had a spirited conversation about him last week with one of our offensive line shows. Still, I think the important thing to remember here is this team's going to need their role players. And there's some role players whose names have been mentioned a lot. And the four that I want to mention that Trent Baalke chose in 2023. And I'm going to make some admissions. Brenton Strange, and these were all non-first round picks. Brenton Strange is the first one that comes from that draft that I believe he's going to have a huge impact on this team. Because he's unselfish, because I think you can get away with him having 40 to 50 catches. And I think he's going to catch most of his targets because I think of where he's going to be when the ball gets there. He's just going to have to just sit there and wait for it. I don't think he's going to have to make difficult catches. But I think his catches will be very, very critical in order to keep the sticks moving for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And his impact, when you look at the backs and the wide receivers, I think they're going to have three receivers that are going to just light it up. And then they're going to use multiple running backs. I just think when it comes to Brenton Strange, he's going to be the dude that opponents, fans go, oh, he's open too? Come on. Oh, not him again. That's the kind of year I think Brenton Strange could have. I wasn't a fan of the pick when they made it, but once again, it's a good pick. And they rave about him. You'd have thought they picked him. You'd have thought they picked Jarian Jones, and you'd have thought they picked Mason Smith too, and Jordan Jefferson. With the way they've been talking about these guys that have been chosen in the last couple of years that weren't their players, in terms of not guys that they went out and added to on this roster. Now, they're always looking to improve. They're always looking to replace guys, and they don't make any bones about that. But knowing that and understanding that that's not a negative connotation, that what it is just it's the nature of the business, and it's people that are just telling you the truth and letting you make an informed decision, whether or not you want to be late to work or whether or not you want to take drills off or stay out all night at the club. They just letting you know exactly what it is. They're letting you be nothing more than yourself. And if yourself, being yourself, gets you cut and sent away from here because somebody else is doing the job better than you, then so be it. No hard feelings. Who else picked in 2024 or 2023 besides Brenton Strange? Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby looks great. Body big and strong. Was actually, in my opinion, the best running back on the team last year. Had the best moments. Was the one that galvanized the fans the most whenever he ran the ball because of how he ran the ball. Limited his mistakes a little bit and had a little bit more impact. And so now people are saying Tank Bigsby has a nice little role that he can carve out for himself here in Jacksonville, and I agree with it. His key is going to be that oops-a-daisy, as in like my man Julian Council for Locked On Panthers always says. Is that one play every now and then that he makes, and it always looks terrible, or it's at the wrong time of the game. And every now and then, Tank did that, and that's what he has to shake and overcome. And maybe we got to shake and overcome it too, because he's a better player than that. Ventrell Miller, you hear them talk about him. I'm going to tell you something. Of all the linebackers, he appears to be the one that plays the fastest. He's had some injury concerns. He's not the biggest guy, but he's kind of gotten over that kind of stuff. I can see Ventrell Miller getting a contract extension. Y'all heard me. With Jack Kaiser's presence, and Foye Oluokun still being the guy, I think the one man that I could see getting a contract extension beyond this year, and I could see him getting it during the season, is Ventrell Miller. If Ventrell Miller gets a contract extension, I want y'all to pay attention. It tells you that Devon Lloyd and Chad Moom are both probably on their way out. I'm not saying they won't make the roster this year, but I'm telling you, it would be during the season if this happened. And if it's during the season, that means to tell me that they really, really value whatever it is that Ventrell Miller brings to the table, and they think they can win with that more than they can win with other people. So don't be surprised if linebacker is a heavy, heavy position that they address next year. And they don't have a first-round pick, so it'll be a good thing to aim for and go after if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. Last but not least is a name you heard early, and then you haven't heard it that much. Now, I'll tell you why. Because early on before the draft, when they were asked about the receivers, they were talking about Brian Thomas Jr., and then they mentioned Christian Kirk, and they mentioned Parker Washington. And folks were like, oh, yeah, Gabe's out of here. And then Gabe left, right? They talk about Dami Brown, BTJ, and Parker Washington. Then they go out and draft Travis Hunter. You ain't heard much from them talking about Parker Washington. I've heard more about the other little younger receivers that they brought in, because now they're trying to fix the room. They're trying to say, not from the coaches, but just from people. They're trying to fix the room and say, okay, we got BTJ, 6'2.5", 6'3". We got another 6'1" receiver with great catch radius. When you hear them talk about their receivers, they say we got catch radius guys, we got route runners, you got speed guys, you got ball in hand guys. Well, with those two guys I just mentioned, you got all of that in one. That two dudes. Those dudes do all of that. Dami Brown does a lot of it. He runs, ball in hand. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a catch radius guy, but he's a real good third receiver. I think he's the perfect complement to those two because he does some of the things that they do. Now, when it comes to Parker Washington, I do think there's a role. The role is to start wide receiver 4, who gets time when they concentrate more time on Travis playing defense, or if any one of those 3 guys I mentioned has tweaked something and has to sit out a little bit, this is where Parker Washington comes in. Also, Parker Washington, I believe in the return game. We've seen it, especially with these new rules. It's more about your ability it's not about your ability to see a hole and get to that spot. It's more about your ability to break tackles in short areas. You kind of turn into a running back on these new kickoffs as opposed to just being that wide receiver type. I think you'll see more running back, like third down back type players. You'll see them, or receivers that are just like Anquan Bolden. I think would have been a great dude on these kickoff returns, and Hines Ward and people that play a brand of football a certain way. Doug Baldwin probably would have been really. Steve Smith Sr., he was already great at this. He would have really been good at this. So Parker Washington is kind of that guy, and he can have a niche and have a 10-year career being just that. So why they haven't heard his name a lot, or you haven't heard his name a lot, is because everybody's been focusing on everyone else and Travis and how they're going to line up and how they're going to use all of these players. It does not mean that those guys haven't played very well. So I've just named 12 players that were drafted by Trent Baalke that will be huge. And these are guys that were not first-round picks. I told you I was going to tell you something about Dave Caldwell. Caldwell actually had some really, really good players picked, especially when you talk about dudes that played in 2017. So in the 17 playoffs, of course, Blake was the quarterback. Marquise Lee, I think he's somewhere banged up. Allen Robinson was banged up, and the people probably believe that if he'd been healthy, they would have gone to the Super Bowl. Brandon Linder, Aaron Colvin, Telvin Smith, Luke Bowenko, those guys all made up central figures on those teams that won championships. This is the first year that Tom Coughlin took over as senior vice president of this team, and they made a run. All right, so 2 years before 17, when they drafted Dante Fowler, they didn't get a whole bunch. They got T.J. Yeldon, who they drafted over him 2 years later. James Sample never did anything here. Rashad Green never did anything, got hurt. That's it. Ben Koyak played some tight end for the Jags for a while. In 17, this is the last draft before Tom Coughlin took over the team. They drafted Jalen Ramsey, Miles Jack, Yannick Ngakoue, Sheldon Day, who I think is still in the league somewhere, right? Brandon Allen has thrown some passes in the league at somebody's backup. So that's not a bad draft. Then after that, Dave Caldwell lost his ability to make the final decisions. Then they draft Leonard Fournette, who I thought was going to be Derrick Henry in terms of longevity and impact in the league. Wasn't as bad as people thought. Won a Super Bowl. Cam Robinson hung around, was good enough that you didn't cut him, but not good enough to really elevate the line. Dwan Smoot, he's back. That's how long he's been a professional, so that's a win. D.D. Westbrook is out of the league, been out of the league a long time. That's it, man. Nobody of significance that first year, that first year that Dave Caldwell wasn't really picking players as much. 2018, after the success, this is where it went bad. Taven Bryan, DJ Chark, Ronnie Harrison. I mean, it just went crazy. It went bad. Then it got okay. Josh Allen, Juwan Taylor, and Josh Oliver, Quincy Williams, Gardner Minshew. That's actually a pretty good draft by Dave Caldwell. The one in 2020 was an absolute disaster. I know what he told me about that year. Him and Trent was doing it together, but he's going to be the one that gets all of the credit for it. But he also probably had a little bit of a feeling that he had a mandate that he had to just go ahead and just kind of get this thing going in another direction. So many of those players in the Jaguars' magical run year 2017, many of those players were here before Tom Coughlin got here. And then after he got here, then it went bad. Then the attitudes kicked in and they had to get rid of a whole bunch of people. But the thing is you can use incumbents to be able to build your team even while you're picking new players. Not to quote Urban Meyer, but I'm going to quote Urban Meyer. He says, they're all your players once you get the job. You can kick them and do whatever you want. No, he didn't say that. I'm just joking. You guys make sure, man, when you tap in to Locked On NFL Scouting, I said when you tap into Locked On NFL Scouting with Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs, that you pay attention because they're going to make you a smarter NFL fan. Make sure you tap into Locked On NFL Scouting wherever you get your podcast each and every day and make it your second listen. We appreciate you joining us here on Locked On Jaguars for 31 minutes. Enjoy, man. Just think about all of the players, regardless of who picked them, that's going to have to help this thing get lifted to new heights. And they all got a shot here this year. We'll give you more about it from minicamp. And as we continue to get closer and closer to training camp, we thank y'all for listening to us here on Locked On Jaguars. You guys take care. We'll see you next time.